Hey everybody, Attorney Richard Saylor here with a new update for you. Some exciting news and times in the employment law world. Some of you may have heard that there are some big changes coming to who gets paid overtime and who doesn't. I want to give you kind of an update as to what's going on and how things may or may not change because it's not definitive yet. But look, the general rule currently is that if somebody gets a guaranteed salary of at least $455 a week, which comes to $23,660 a year, and they do some type or sort of management duties or administrative duties, they're not entitled to overtime. So think about that for a second. $455 a week in this day and age is not very much. But if you make at least that guaranteed right now, you're not entitled to overtime compensation. So the law is outdated, obviously, because think about how expensive things are in today's day and age. Prices have gone up, and that salary threshold of $455 was done in the early 2000s, so it hasn't changed with inflation or everything else. So, interestingly, in 2016, President Obama tried to help the employees, and what he did in that instance was he had a proposal where the salary threshold would increase to $47,476 a year, which meant essentially $913 a week. So it almost doubled what you had to make in order to not be paid overtime. So Obama's administration had suggested that if an employee is not paid at least $913 a week in guaranteed salary, they would be entitled to overtime. Well, employers lost their mind. They filed lawsuits, they petitioned to have this what we call stayed or held, and it actually never passed through. And the reason why employers were so outraged is that it would create so much of an overtime obligation because most employees don't make close to $1,000 a week in salary. So think about how many new employees would have to be paid overtime under the Obama regulations. So those never went into effect. That's a big misconception. That never changed. So it's still at that $455 a week, which is very low. And again, right now, if you make $455 a week in a salary and you're a manager or an administrator, you don't get overtime. Obama's suggestions would have been huge for employees to get overtime. So enter President Trump. So in March of 2019, President Trump came out with a new proposed regulation. It's still proposed, but they do assume it's going to pass. But under Trump's administration, if you make $35,000 a year or $35,308, which comes to $679 a week, okay, as a guaranteed salary and you're a manager or administrator, if you don't make at least that, you're entitled to overtime. So this is going to create, if it passes, millions of opportunities for employees in the millions to actually receive overtime unless they make that $679 a week threshold in salary. So the way it works is it's now in front of what's called the Department of Labor, and the general public can submit their comments. Employers are going to, again, oppose any increase, and employee advocacy groups are absolutely going to say, look, it's too low. Let's go with what Obama said. My gut feeling tells me the 679 is going to pass, and it's going to be a big time win for employees. And a lot more employees around the United States are going to start being paid overtime. Now, again, there's until May 21st, 2019 for the public to comment. I don't see this being implemented in 2019. And if it is implemented in 2019, it will be late in the year. So it will be real interesting to see whether this passes. Again, my gut tells me that it does. And you're going to see a large increase of employees in the United States. My guess is somewhere around 2 million employees who would now be eligible for overtime because they make less than $679 a week in a guaranteed salary. So there's my musings on a Friday morning here in April. Hope everybody's starting to thaw out and see the spring. Of course, if you have any questions or want some information, you can always email us at richard@floridaovertimelawyer.com, or you can also go on our website, www.floridaovertimelawyer.com. Take care, guys.